Hi guys, it's Nicole. I am out on the trails right now. It's snowy here in Vermont, and I'm just feeling especially grateful about winter. And that's why I want to share this special program that we're doing with Share Winter. Their organization is entirely about getting more kids on snow. What they do is fund organizations that bring kids to the mountains. They get them lessons, they get them gear, and they help them fall in love with winter. We're asking you to shop our very small capsule of Share Winter collection right now to support Share Winter. 100% of the profits are going to go to the Share Winter Foundation. Thank you so much for your support. You can find the collection in our Ski Moms shop at theskimoms.co and just click on the shop, or you can click the link in show notes.
Hey, Ski Moms, if you want to win at gifting this year, give the Icon Pass and an entire winter of good times at 50-plus mountains, including California's best. But you better hurry. Last chance to buy is December 12th. Drop in from $329 for an adult and as low as $0 down at iconpass.com. And here's a special deal for families. From December 7th through December 13th, 2024, kids will get up to 7 free lift tickets at 15 of Alterra Mountain's company's North American mountain destinations to use during the new Kids Ski Free Week. Kids 12 and under may receive a free lift ticket each day to use from December 7th through 13th at any participating destination. And you can be 17 and under at Stratton and Schweitzer. To redeem an offer, check out the destination's official website or visit guest services at participating Alterra destinations. No other purchases necessary. Rentals and lessons are not included.
Welcome to Season 4 of the Ski Moms podcast. We're your hosts, Nicole and Sarah.
We want to take a moment to remind you about the Ski Moms discount page on the skimoms.co website. We've collaborated with our favorite brands to bring you a ton of money-saving deals. For instance, we have a special link for Ski Butlers for 20% off your family's gear rentals. Ski Butlers delivers your rentals right to the living room of your condo or rental home or the lobby of your hotel, saving you hours of time. You'll never have to wait in a long rental store line at the base of the mountain again. When you use our links and codes, you not only save a bundle, you're also sending a message to the brands about the purchasing power of the Ski Moms. Head to www.theskimoms.co/discounts to take advantage of these special offers. The Ski Moms are so excited to welcome Isabelle Winkles to the podcast today. She is the CFO at Braze, a cloud-based software company. But most importantly, she is a ski coach. She is an alpine race team coach at Mohawk Mountain in Connecticut, and she got her level 100 certification. So we are excited to talk to her about all things ski racing at the young level, because we've had so many questions about when do I get my kids involved? How do I get involved? What is ski racing all about? So we are here for it. We want to talk about ski coaching and ski racing. So welcome, Isabelle.
Well, thank you both for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So we always kick things off hearing about your ski origin story. Where did it start? How young were you? Did you love it? All those things.
Both my parents are French citizens. And so skiing was a big part of their lives growing up. Never really competitive racers, but did it as families when they were younger. And so I think it was important to them that they introduced my sister and I to skiing. Not necessarily competitively in the early days, but really wanted us to be good skiers, safe skiers. So started fairly young, grew up in Washington, D.C. So not a lot of big mountains on the East Coast, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic region. But went to some mountains in the local area around there. And then once we got a little older, our parents started to take us to France to ski with the cousins. And so there really got to appreciate skiing in the Alps, which was truly fantastic. And back in those days, skiing with your parents was great and fun, but the parents were really excited to put you in lessons that lasted the entire day. So in France, it's called l'École de ski français, so the French ski school. It works on a series of stars. So you start with a snowflake that has no stars when you're an early beginner. And then you add 1 star and then 2 stars and then 3 stars. So I was probably about 10 years old when I started in France, and I was already at the 2 star level by the time I got there. And once you have all your stars, there's kind of nowhere to go but into the competitive group. And so my cousins were all boys. And so, they loved to race downhill. And I kind of did it because it's what everybody did, but it was super fun. And it got us out on the hill, early in the morning. We did it 7 days a week during the holidays when we were there for Christmas time. And then also in Colorado when we would ski for spring break here in the US.
Tell me a little bit about what a French ski instructor is like. I'm kind of picturing like a cigarette. I just need a visual and just the overall attitude.
So it was the 90s. So first we got to set the stage. So late 80s, early 90s. So there's definitely, smoking. If we were having lunch together, they were definitely having a glass of wine at lunch. So it was a really interesting bunch. In France, when you are racing, the way the races work to earn medals is there's a pace setter who goes down first. And the kids are all effectively racing against the clock set by the pace setter. And so we were all told by our parents, the best day to go out and race is actually on New Year's Day, because on New Year's Eve, all these guys are out there partying all night long. And so their pace is going to be a little slower. And so our best chance at the best medal was always on New Year's Day. So, as a group of these guys were probably in their late 20s, early 30s, obviously when we were, young teenagers, but they were truly, truly excellent skiers in incredible, incredible shape, despite the fact that, yes, there was definitely cigarette smoking happening. And they really, really loved the sport. And so they were out there any chance they got. And I think they legitimately loved working with us kids. It was really important to us that technique be taught early and well. We didn't just do gates. We did a ton of drilling. We did different terrain. We did different conditions. They took us in a safe way off-piste. And probably the craziest thing, and I'm sure in previous podcasts you guys have talked about this for those of us that skied in the 80s and 90s, the craziest thing is that none of us wore helmets, including the instructors. And so that was, probably the biggest change, the evolution that's happened since then. But it was a lot of fun and really just kind of got all the kids out there and active every day.
And I'm also imagining that the French instructors, if you were doing something wrong, they would be quite frank, telling you were doing something wrong. And also, not everybody gets a medal just for showing up, I'm guessing.
That was 100% true. In fact, and we can talk a little bit more in a bit about my current coaching experience, but one of the reasons I decided to coach is when I saw my kids in earlier incarnations of kind of competitive skiing. They didn't make the race team the first time they were on the interclub team. I sort of paid attention to what was happening in the interclub team, and I was watching what was happening. And they were just doing gates, and I was like, "Well, no, where's the feedback? Nobody's giving them feedback." And I went to the guy who ran the program, and I was like, who's out there yelling at the kids? And he was like, well, we don't like to yell at the children. And I was like, what do you mean? And what I meant is the kids are going fast, and it's hard to hear, and they're wearing helmets, and they've got all this gear, and so you got to yell at them so they hear the feedback in real time. I wasn't necessarily meaning that you have to be, aggressive with them. But now that I'm a coach, I actually see that these kids are craving feedback. They want to know what they did wrong. They want to know how they can improve. And so I think that was definitely something that was super helpful. And you absolutely did not get a medal just for showing up. In fact, I had my fair share of wipeouts and, icy conditions. And it was like, hey, you finished, congratulations, but today there is no medal.
Okay, so now bring us past your ski racing career into college. Did you continue to ski with friends in college? And then tell us about just your family ski dynamic.
In college, I didn't race for the team or anything like that. I think my school had a ski team, but I didn't participate in that. I skied a ton with friends after business school. Ended up doing a ski house share in Vermont. So I was really, really active. I'd, gotten to the point where I'd gotten really good and all of my friends were pretty good, and we could just go out there and just have a great time. We had also learned to appreciate apres-ski as much as skiing itself. And so that was always a really good time, and just kind of hopping in the car and getting out there. When you say family, you mean my old family or my young family?
No, we want you to paint a picture of what the family looks like now and what your home mountain is now.
Today, I have 3 kids, and we bought a house. We're native New Yorkers now. My husband and I have both been in the city for upwards of 20 years. And we have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old, 2 boys and a girl. And about 10 years ago, we bought a house up in Litchfield County, Connecticut, Goshen on Woodridge Lake. And the nearest mountain is Mohawk Mountain. And so as soon as the kids really started to be capable of walking and having the appropriate balance and enjoying being outside, we started to put them on skis incredibly young. And Mohawk Mountain is this wonderful little mountain where there's something for everyone. And with the little tiny magic carpet, you can put, small children on skis, be there with them. And it's a great way to get kids started. So in the early days, skiing with small children is incredibly physical for the parents. Children have a knack for turning into like blobs. But my husband and I was, obviously always a really passionate skier. My husband has become both a good skier, an avid skier, and just somebody who really appreciates the sport. And so it was important to both of us that this becomes something that our children do. Again, when they were super little, we didn't necessarily have our eye on competitive racing or anything like that. But it's just important that they get out there. And it was just such a great activity to do when it's so cold and given the fact that there's snow. And so we started getting our little ones on skis about 2.5. And it was great. And they really took to it. And then the younger ones, as they saw the older ones doing it, they really wanted to participate. And so very early on, we had them all on skis. And Mohawk has, in addition to sort of having great available facilities, there's also incredible educational programs that come well before you're ready to be on the race team. And so we just started putting our kids in that the moment they were eligible. There's an element of, we are not, as much as I now am a coach, I am not a teacher. And so pedagogically, I didn't necessarily know how best to kind of teach my kids as they continued to progress. And also, as we all know, as parents, it is much harder to get your children to listen to you than it is to get them to listen to another teacher. And I think with the social structure of having other kids, there was a little bit of that pressure to pay attention and do well and participate. And so there was never any complaints from our kids. They loved being in all of this instruction, which was great. There were days when it was so cold that the mountain decided to cancel lessons. If you wanted to put your kids in, you could, but if you didn't, you would get an extra lesson at the end of the season. And we always put our kids in and we're like, nope, this is, develop grit, build character. You'll be fine. You'll come in for some hot chocolate when you need to, but it's important that, we take advantage of this and just get out there. And so we continue to do that for years. And then as soon as the kids started to be eligible to try out for the race team, they were really excited to do that. Not only because they saw the kids on the mountain, but they had friends and we had family friends whose kids had done it. And they really respected these older boys, older girls who did this. And they're like, oh, I want to do that. I think they also caught glimpses of the equipment. And I think the equipment, it also starts to get a little bit more fun and interesting when you're racing. And so they definitely wanted to be a part of that. They didn't make the race team in the early days, which I was sort of almost thankful for. I was like, great, my children are learning that you don't always get what you want the first time you want to do it. This is actually something that's worth having because not everybody gets it. And so we'll keep coming back. And so they were lucky 2 years ago to be invited to join the interclub team. And that was their first flavor of actual competition, even though it wasn't the Alpine race team. It was sort of more of a club team. It was also my husband and mine's, but at the time, really more my husband's first flavor of what it means to be a race team parent. Very early, very far away races, some amount of extra gear, dealing with never losing your bib and keeping all of that stuff and making sure they've got all the right equipment and everything is tuned and ready to go. But actually in the early days, I wasn't as involved in all of that. I was with my younger daughter who was in the programs at Mohawk and wasn't yet traveling. And so my husband did all of this. And so I was fairly unaware for a very long time of really what it was like to be a race team parent. And so fast forward, a year, and my boys did make the race team. And we were at a dinner party at a friend's house. The husband was actually a coach the prior year. And everybody starts going, "Oh my gosh, Isabelle, you should be a coach." And actually, everybody started to sort of hear this. I was like, "Yeah, you should do it. You should do it." So this was in September. The boys were already on the team. And I was sort of like, what? I hadn't really been to any races. I didn't know what this was all about. I was like, what are you guys talking about? My husband even was like, "You should definitely do this. You should definitely do this." So over the course of a couple of hours, I was sort of convinced to do it. And it all just sort of snowballed from there. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. But that is how I became, for the first time this past season, an alpine race coach.
I'm guessing there was wine involved in this peer pressure
Most
situation.
certainly.
I hope it was a good bottle of wine. I do, before we get into your coaching experience, there were a couple things you mentioned in there that we like to break things down as if somebody landed on a mountain and this is all new to them. So you were talking about inter-club racing. We also know that there's something called development racing programs and then alpine racing programs. So let's take a moment and break these down. So when somebody's kids gets involved, there are basic weekend programs. These are seasonal lessons that have nothing to do with ski racing. This is just getting skills. This is learning how to make parallel turns, safety, fun, all of the things. If your mountain has a racing development program or ski racing, there is often they have those infographics where if this, then you take a left, and if that, you take a right. If your kid is interested in racing, you take a left. And what would some of those offerings look like? Isabelle, walk us through those.
Yeah. So in the first step at our mountain was something called Yeti Club. And it was sort of 2.5 hours, one day on the weekend. You picked your day. And it's really those kind of early days of that, of skiing and kind of getting to know the mountain and your skills, as you indicated. And at the end of that 7-week period, the instructor will usually tell you if you're ready to move up to kind of that next level. And the next level is usually called mountain division. And that's just a little bit more speed, a little bit more skill. But it's still, mostly for fun and can lead you sort of anywhere. At the end of mountain division, the instructor will then tell you if you are ready for something called D squad. And D squad, with the D standing for development, and it's really race team development. And so D squad is really that next level where if you are interested, you can stay in mountain division for years and become a very competent skier through the mountain division program. But a D squad style approach is something that is really actually going to train you. And actually in D squad, they are going to take you to the race tryouts. And that is part of the program, is to actually participate in the race tryouts. And so they're definitely, the goal coming out of D squad is to figure out how to ascend either the alpine race team or potentially the club sport, the club team, as the next step.
So, and parents listening, D squad often does not involve travel other than to your home mountain. We're going to get into the requirements of some of the more advanced. So D squad is usually at your home mountain, so not a lot of travel. And the equipment, let's talk a minute about what the equipment requirements would be for something like a D squad versus the mountain squad. Are you getting into more expensive equipment at this point, Isabelle?
Yeah, not necessarily. In fact, depending on the age of the child, even in the race team, there's only a few nuances of what you really need at sort of those 8, 9, 10-year-old levels. So in all of these development programs, for example, starting even just with the helmet, you can have the soft-eared helmet. So you're not yet in the zone where you're having to be able to attach that bar for slalom. The children are not being asked to have a differentiated ski, a slalom ski versus a GS ski. They all use the same poles, so there isn't a differentiation there. Nobody's putting on guards yet for their hands or their shins. So the equipment is fairly consistent and fairly generic It's only really when you actually ascend to the race team, and actually really the alpine race team, not even really so much on the club team, because the club team tends to do mostly GS and doesn't really do a lot of slalom. And so you're not really having to do a whole lot of knocking gates down. And the reality is when the kids are learning how to race, knocking the gates down is just not something they focus on, because actually from a technique perspective, focusing on knocking down the gates ends up actually creating bad habits rather than good habits. Until a child is really on the race team, and actually probably at the U12 level rather than the U10 level, the equipment is all very, very consistent. The only difference is once you are on the formal alpine race team, and this is true at all age levels, you do have to have the hard-eared helmet. That is a requirement. Even if you are competing in a GS race, you have to have the hard-eared helmet.
We left off, we were at development on the D squad. Our kids are loving it. They're still really enthusiastic. And the coach says, you know what, we're leading you to the race tryouts. And what happens from there? Walk us through the next pivot on our graph.
In the race team tryouts, I will say the tryouts are both for speed and technique. So the name of the game is not necessarily just we're looking for super fast kids, because kids, when they're little, they don't weigh very much. Their skis aren't very long, and they're just not going to be able to pick up the speed that a larger, older person is. But you can start to see what their habits are, what their technique is. And so I can get a kid to go faster over time, but I'm really looking for, and the coaches are really looking for, that perspective that from a skills perspective, from a technique perspective, the child is actually starting to look a little bit like a racer. And those are skills and techniques that you've been learning and been working on. And the D squad, the D squad instructors are watching you and they're like, are you doing the drills the way that we've been learning them? So the kids are definitely being coached to succeed. There's no tricks. You're not suddenly given a curveball. You're just being asked to sort of show what you know. What ends up happening is there is a limited number of spots. And so what the organization will do is ask that the prior members decide whether they're going to rejoin or not. Then there are obviously kids who age up and age out. And so there's that redistribution that has to happen. And then there's available spots. And the available spots are then filled with the best kids who had a combination of really good or promising technique and some amount of speed or desire for speed. And so the race tryouts will happen in sort of the February-March timeframe, but the parents won't actually find out until August, generally, whether the kid actually made the team. But that's the time lag between the two. So that can be obviously a little bit frustrating for both parents and kids.
Are you starting to dream about hot cocoa, snowy chairlift rides, and zipping down perfectly groomed trails? Well, so are we. And that's why we're teaming up with Vrbo this winter. If you're like us, you're always in planning mode and trying to maximize the fun on your family ski vacations. Vrbo's got you covered with private vacation rentals designed for families and friends. Here's why we love Vrbo. First up, space. Our family loves to spread out when we travel, and we all know how much stuff a ski trip involves. Vrbo has a huge selection of quality homes, often with 3 or more bedrooms, so everyone can spread out comfortably, and there's room for all your gear. Vrbo properties offer exclusive homes with amazing views of the mountains, and many with ski-in, ski-out, slope-side access. Oh, and have we mentioned privacy? With Vrbo, you'll always get a private vacation rental, meaning no awkward host encounters or shared spaces. It's all yours. Now let's talk about amenities. Many Vrbo homes have gourmet kitchens, game rooms for the kids, hot tubs, and cozy fire pits, making them perfect for quality time when your ski day is done. And thanks to Vrbo's Book with Confidence guarantee, you're protected every step of the way with 24/7 support and rebooking assistance if plans change last minute. Ready for your next adventure? Download the Vrbo app or check out vrbo.com for trusted, family-friendly getaways and plan a stay everyone will love. This winter, we'll be sharing some of our favorite ski properties on social media. Make sure to follow along and get inspiration to plan your next trip. I'm sure that the tryout timelines and notifications vary. I know when Ava tried out for the Mohawk team. It was actually like in December. And I think she knew like within a day. And I do remember looking at my husband and just thinking, what did we just get ourselves into? Because we had no idea. And I also remember like one of my favorites was she came back from her first day of being on the race team, and she had one of those like, pink and purple and blue and the pink mittens. And she just looked like a big piece of candy. And she came back from her first race team practice, and she just looked at it. She said, "Mom, this is not going to work." And I remember we had to go somewhere and get her all the stuff she got the coat. A lot of race teams, I guess, you either buy a coat or provide a coat. But I'm guessing that different mountains have different timelines, whether it's the season before or if they still have slots, they might hold like open tryouts. So I think a lot of that comes down to contacting your local mountain and figuring out that timeline, because if you're saying she was trying out basically the prior season. So you really have to kind of be on top of this, that these timelines have definitely like accelerated more than when our girls were trying out.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And you mentioned the coat. That is one thing that sort of defines, I think, some of the experience for these kids is you really get to feel like you are part of a team. And so you either find a hand-me-down coat, of which there are a lot, or you buy your kid a new coat and they're all there in the same color. They wear those things every day. My kids wore them to school. They just adored them. And they really make the kids, I think, feel like they're part of the team. And when they get together with kids at other mountains for races, all the mountains seem to have slightly different colors. And so you've got the blues and the blacks and the yellows and the reds. And it's just really fun to see all of that in these like pint-sized little guys. I focus on the U10, so I'm always with the little guys. And it's really fun to see.
You were talking about Interclub versus the Alpine race team. Interclub did not exist when Sarah and I were going through, and I think we're both a little jealous because, again, that doesn't sound like it has the travel element involved in it. What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so interestingly, it does have the travel, and actually the travel is a little bit worse at the younger levels because in Connecticut, there are two leagues effectively. At the younger levels, there's what's called CYSL, which is the Connecticut Youth Ski League. And then as you get older, you kind of ascend into this tri-state. And so the Connecticut Youth Ski League at the U10, U12, U14 level was reserved for the Alpine race team. If you were on the club team, you actually went out of state to do that, the younger. So my husband was actually doing some pretty far drives with the kids. I think at least once he did an overnight the night before because, if you have to be on the hill at 7 a.m., it can be pretty challenging.
Okay, so we're on the Alpine race team. Your kids have gotten the tap on the shoulder. They have their red jacket. They're probably wearing it in seasonally inappropriate weather because they're so excited. What are the parents in for?
Yeah, so I would say at the U10 level, the gear is still fairly basic. It's going to look a lot like the gear that the kids had when they weren't on the race team. Again, the only distinction is going to be that hard-eared helmet, which is going to be a requirement. But other than that, at that age level, they're going to want a good, solid GS ski that's kind of an all-around ski. They are going to do slalom and GS, but there isn't this requirement to have these differentiated skis. They're still in the early days of their training, of their abilities. They're going to do a lot more drills versus gates anyway. And so the equipment tends to be fairly basic. And similarly, we don't always advise that the kids start wearing the guards because the guards will incentivize them to go start trying to hit the gates. And again, that tends to create more bad habits than good habits. And so gear at the U10 level, fairly straightforward, starts to get a little bit more complicated once you start getting into the U12 and above. They will typically, you're still in the hard ear helmet. The race coaches will tell you, look, you really need a good GS ski separate from a slalom ski. That then brings about the need for different poles. You'll have the slalom poles, which will be straight. And then the GS poles, which are a little bit more curved because the kids can spend a little bit more time in a tuck position. And so the curve contours the kids' bodies. And so you've doubled the volume of the equipment that you need to deal with. Interesting And challenging part, particularly for parents, if you've got, U12s they're 10 and 11 years old. They're still young and they're not necessarily staying on top of all of these requirements. And you have to switch out the gear. Which skis do I need today? If you are wearing the bar on the chin bar on the helmet, you cannot use the chin bar if you are not doing slalom. If you are doing GS, they will make you take the chin bar off. And so I've had kids show up with the chin bar from a previous practice, and it's like, ooh, sorry, today we're doing GS. We're gonna have to figure out a way to take that off, and you need an Allen wrench to take that off, and then you've got parts that need to be taken care of.
Yes, let's take a moment to talk about the law screws that attach the chin bar to the helmet.
Yeah.
Because it is impossible to keep track of them. And this ski mom will admit that she just bought 2 helmets because after one too many races of trying to chase Sarah down, Sarah, do you have an extra screw for this helmet? We just quit. And we just bought a slalom and a GS helmet, which is, that's extra money. But I do want to talk a minute about the gear, because as a seasoned ski mom, what I want to tell you is you need to go to the ski swaps. You need to make sure you join the Facebook group or the WhatsApp group or whatever digital group that your ski team has. Hunt it down because one exists, because there are always kids aging up and out of their current gear. And there is gear available that is used and in perfectly good condition for another season. There is almost zero reason for your kid, even if you have, more money than the Bezos family, it's just not the right thing to do. And then pass yours along as well. It's not doing anybody any good in your garage. And also to label, Mabel's labels, free plug here for them. Every single leaky pole looks the exact same. And the kids come down on cold days and they throw them in this pile. It looks like pickup sticks. And if your kid doesn't have a label, or if you want to put colored duct tape on it, whatever you can do, but please do not send your racers to the mountain without having this stuff labeled, because it will not come back home.
Including the coats, actually, because on race days, the kids go up and they're wearing their, super cool aerodynamic, which I always find so funny on these little, 8, 9-year-olds are wearing these aerodynamic skin tight suits, and they're freezing. And so they wear their coats over it. But of course they want to be cool. So the coats come off before they go down the hill, and the coats end up in this gigantic pile. So the fact that the different race teams have different colored coats is great. One of the jobs as a coach, which I knew what I was getting myself into, is to carry the coats down. And so it's funny. I've never skied so much without my own poles, because I need to have free hands when I'm working with the kids and dealing with races. And so we'll carry, as many coats as I can carry. I'll carry them down the mountain. But they do just end up in a pile, and they all look the same. So between the poles, the skis, I remember this year, this past season, there were only really like 2 or 3 different kinds of skis that everybody had. So the leaky poles, everybody's are identical. The skis, there's like not a lot of differentiation. The coats are almost the same, kind of, you can see by size. So definitely the labels, or, a Sharpie or anything that you can do to identify your stuff. And then on WhatsApp channels, you'll get the constant parent, hey, we left this. It has this name on it. It's this color if anybody sees it. So, parents definitely try to help each other out.
And I definitely remember, the girls, they wanted the guards. They wanted the pole guards, the shin guards. And as you're saying, the coaches really not wanting them to have those things at a younger age. There really is a reason for it, to develop the right skills. But like we said in some of the other scenarios, they see the older kids with it and they really want it. And I remember, our girls had to earn those things by showing that they really had the right skills to be able to use it. I do remember watching races where some of these kids had the pole guards and they'd, ski across the hill to punch a gate, which they really could have taken a much more direct path, but it looked like a lot of fun to go hit the gate.
It's helpful actually to tell the parents that they can also, not have to worry about that, because it's one less thing that the parents need to worry about. And I myself, I had to learn. I wasn't racing with that stuff as a kid. I didn't even have a helmet, let alone all of these guards. I never had a racing suit. It was just, it was super basic when I was doing it as a kid. And so a lot of these parents, even if they're really good skiers, they're kind of like, how do I need an Allen wrench, and how does this hook on? And with the screw, I've got a long screw and a short screw, and it's just really complicated. And then things change, day to day, depending on what the drills are and what the races are. So I'd say, certainly at those younger ages, it's almost like by the time it becomes really important, it's almost like your kid should almost be able to just own the problem and figure out how to screw stuff on, recognize what the schedule is and what they're going to need.
Hey, ski moms, if you're looking to add a little extra fun to your family ski outfits this season, check out Skeeta's accessories. Skeeta's hats, neck warmers, and headbands come in the most amazing prints, from bold colors to playful patterns. There's something for every style. Not only are they super warm and comfortable, they are also made with the community in mind. Skeeta believes in local production. By creating limited edition prints with a focus on quality, they have generated a cult following by folks who love to play outside. And they're always coming up with new prints and items. Right now, I'm absolutely loving my Skeeta Pursuit liner gloves. I'm using them for running and hiking, and then we'll transition them to mitten liners once the snow falls and my ski season begins. And for gift giving, look no further than the High Pile Fleece collection of hats, neck warmers, and mittens. It's the coziest fabric around, and it's the gift on everyone's wish list this year. Ski Moms podcast listeners can save 20% off your order with code SKIMOMS20. That's SKI_MOM_20 at skeeta.com. We are not going to focus on tuning in this, because we want to talk more about what kids are getting out of this and what you're getting out of this. So for all of our ski racing mom parents out there, we're going to put a pin in the tuning and care and keeping of skis, and that may be a podcast for another day of ski racing. But as Isabelle is saying, as they get older, it becomes more of their responsibility. It is something to be aware of, but at these little ages, we're not going to go there today. But let's talk about, I like what Sarah was talking about with delayed gratification, that ski racing does give you that. And you've really got to keep, practicing to make those small gains in skills. What are some of the things that your kids have gotten out of it, maybe compared to other organized sports?
I think that skiing comes with a lot of frictional points. It's cold. The gear isn't always comfortable. You're not always, feeling it at 5:30 in the morning when you've got to get up and put this neoprene suit on and get in the car to go an hour and a half away. I think that stuff develops character and grit. I am really excited for my kids. My kids they've got a great life. A lot of things are really super fun and easy. And I actually appreciate that sometimes they just have to go out there in not so great conditions and just get through it. We had a race this past season where it was literally raining, cold, almost icy rain the entire time. And even the adults, our gloves were soaked through, our clothes were soaked through. These kids were freezing and they had to do 2 runs. And so it was our job as adults to kind of get them through it. But I didn't want them to quit. And they were going to be so excited at, 10:30 in the morning when it was all kind of over. They had succeeded. They had completed the race. And so I really love that grit, that aspect to it. That I think is really, really important. Builds a lot of character. They just learn to muscle through a situation. And then the other thing about racing, because you are so focused on technique, I think that racing creates really safe skiers. And so I am, now in my mid 40s, I'm no longer crashing down gates, but I can get myself out of any situation on any mountain, anytime. And so if my kids are going to love to have a little bit of speed and love to do things that are a little bit more challenging, I want them to learn those core skills to be able to do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize them in any way. And so there are medals in it for some of these kids. And there is an achievement of being the first or the second or the third. I think that sort of makes it fun to try for. And in the process, you're part of a team, you're learning that grit, and you're becoming a really safe skier.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. We have seen all of that. I remember a race, a CYSL race, where it looked like March of the Penguins, where the kids were just being blown at the top of the hill. And I remember one kid actually blew back into the start house and had to be pushed out again. So yeah, that'll give you some grit and probably not great for your time. But let's talk a little bit about what you're getting out of this and your path to becoming a ski coach.
You mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, I am the CFO of a New York-based company. We're publicly traded. That comes with a lot of demands on my time. I love my job. I love what I do, but I find that I don't spend as much time with the kids as I would like to. And my husband has always he's been the soccer coach dad, and he was the guy going to the races when the kids were doing the club team. And he was involved in sort of a different way, a much more proactive way. And when my friends were sort of egging me on to participate in this, I thought this was great on two levels. One is it was going to be this dedicated time, because obviously I was going to coach at least one of my children because that was going to be easier for logistics purposes. So I'd get to spend that time with one of my kids. And it was going to just sort of get me to share something I'm really passionate about, pretty good at. And that was a great relationship to kind of continue to build with the kids. And so for me, it's dedicated time with the kids. It's being directly involved in an activity that they like, that they're passionate about, that is just active. It's a lifetime sport. So it's, you see older individuals being able to still be out there on skis. So it's great motivation for me. It gets me out of the house and on skis and outside. And I'm doing it both days. I'm doing it Saturdays and Sundays. And then it's just an incredible way to stay really active. So there's a personal aspect for me of just, getting out there, and then a family aspect where I get to spend that extra time with the kids. And the reality is a lot of this stuff happens earlier in the day. You're out on the mountain from kind of 8 to 1. Well, if I had to work, if I had to get on a phone call with folks from the office or what have you, which doesn't happen often on the weekends, it can always happen in the afternoon. And so that dedicated time in the morning, particularly when you're at a race, you're up at 5:30 in the morning, and you're kind of done by 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's this incredible window of time where you are completely dedicated to your kid, but you can still work it into a busy work calendar. And as much as I love doing this with and for my kids, I actually think I'm going to do this well beyond them graduating out of it. I have just fallen in love with the whole process. It was really, really inspiring to see the kids get so much better from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. And so I think I'll be that 75-year-old granny who's, teaching your kids how to ski and developing their race training skills, 20 to 25 years from now.
Well, when our girls were on the D team at Mohawk, they were actually being taught by a grandfather of one of the other D squatters. So maybe you'll continue on until you're the grandma coach for your grandchild D squatter.
And tell us, what's the cross section of who's a ski coach for any mom who's sitting there, and maybe she was a ski racer, maybe she wasn't, who else is out there on the mountain with you?
Yeah. So I would say at Mohawk, the vast majority are parents. That is the vast majority. There's always sort of one or two folks who are, as you mentioned, kind of a grandfather or somebody who's been involved in the program for years and is just kind of hanging around. This year, actually, we were very lucky for some of the older kids. We had a previous racer who he himself was like in his mid-20s. And the teenage racers thought he was awesome. And so that's really nice to see when people actually come back and continue to be involved. But it is predominantly parents. The other thing I would say is it's wildly predominantly men. This year, we had 2 mom ski coaches, so myself and another woman. Both of us have 3 kids. We both coach the U10s. And it was super fun to have another woman out there. Thing about ski coaching is that you're responsible for setting the gates. I think setting the gates is something that, you get out there with the drill and people show you sort of where to put them. The hardest part as a woman, and I'm not a very tall or big woman, is actually taking the gates out. And so I think the advantage of having these guys do it, the dads, is that quite frankly, they're just stronger, and just taking the gates. If you don't know what a gate looks like, the pole is it's, a vertical stick. And then at the bottom, there are these like furry things that almost like an arrow, like a furry thing that sticks out, but they point upwards. So you jam the pole with the help of a drill into the snow. And then actually you're creating all this friction with the sort of furry brush things. They're really hard to take out. And so I remember the first time I went out with the team, with the other coaches, and they're like, yeah, we're going to take the course down. And I said, great, I'm going to go help. And I went out there to try and pull them out. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And even beyond that, so then I just followed one of the dads and I was like, okay, well, I'll hold the poles. You take them out and I'll hold them. And then even that, they're bulky, they're heavy, it's hard to hold a lot of them. So that is probably the hardest part as a woman doing ski coaching, is there is a really physical aspect to it when you're setting and taking down race courses. But other than that, I think, men, women, it's great to have kind of the mix. And sometimes there's just as many girls on the race team as there are boys. And so that's really great to have kind of role models for both genders.
I mean, we know the classic conundrum that women only apply for a job if they have every qualification checked, and men in general will apply for the job if they have one of 20. They're like, I'm going to go for this. I think that may be a somewhat similar for ski coaching. Women would say like, well, I didn't race, or I only raced in whatever the case may be. So would you encourage someone to give it a try?
100%. I have that similar brain chemistry where it's like, if I don't feel like I'm going to be great and super overqualified, I might be more likely to kind of pull back. The way that manifests itself for me in ski coaching is I'm probably not going to raise my hand to go coach the U18s. So because I feel like I don't necessarily have the experience or the skills to be able to coach at that level. Now, I really pay attention to how other more experienced coaches give feedback. And so I feel like I'm learning. And so maybe one day I can move up into those levels, but I couldn't really speak from experience. With the U10s, they are still developing ski technique, right? They are 8 and 9 years old. So even their bodies aren't fully formed. So they're still growing and they're still finding their balance. And so there's still a lot that you can teach them if you are a capable, qualified skier. So I don't think, having been any kind of crazy racer back in the day with medals and international competitions, I don't think any of that is super, super critical. I do think it's important to have had some exposure to gates, whether maybe you did NASTAR races for fun as a kid, and you have this, this spirit of competition, and you have a passion for high quality skiing technique. So anything like that, I think, is going to lead you to be a competent and qualified instructor. And quite frankly, you got to want to be out there. So it's not easy. Sometimes you're out there doing drills with the kids and you're showing them. And so you're skiing. And sometimes you are standing on the side of the mountain at the bottom of a race course, watching the kids cycle through. And, your feet are going a little bit numb because you're just kind of standing there, and maybe you're a little cold because you're not really moving around as much, but they need that feedback. And the only way they're going to get the consistent feedback is if you are watching them go down once and again and again, and you're giving them that feedback by watching them.
How are you figuring out what drills to do? Did you get a special certification? How do you continue, honing your skills so you can be an effective coach?
So when I joined, the only requirement was to get a very basic coaching certificate, which you could get online. And they mostly really want to know that you've been through all these appropriate, how to deal with children and sexual harassment and all of that. So there's kind of this bar that, I think I did the same courses that my husband did when he wanted to be a soccer coach. So that was the original kind of minimum bar. So at that point in the beginning of the season, I was relying on my own recollection of how I learned to ski and how I was taught. And then I had a more experienced coach with the U10s, and he would talk through drills and display stuff, and we would just learn as we went. And I was like, oh yes, this is all coming back to me now as sort of a kid who formally learned how to ski. Now I'm just going to apply that to these kids. Over the course of the season, the rules changed I don't know if it's the East Coast or the just general ski racing and ski coaching rules. And this level 100 certification is now a requirement for all competitive race coaches. And the level 100 is kind of no joke. It's actually a full day on skis with someone who is certified to certify you. And you have to basically spend the day teaching a group. So it's a group of individuals who are all trying to get the level 100, and everybody takes turns actually running a drill, coaching a drill, teaching a drill. And you have to be competent at displaying the drill, explaining the drill, giving feedback to others as they do the drill, observing. So there's all of these aspects to it. And it is really a full day. I learned a ton by doing that. And I am blanking on the name of the booklet, but there is this little booklet that goes through all of the different aspects of skiing, whether it's balance or the side slipping and the friction and the turning and rotation. So there's all these aspects of skiing that are then broken down into drills that can hone the skill in each area. And actually, it comes with these little QR codes on every single page. And if you put your phone on the QR code, a video will pop up that will actually show you how to do the drill. And so there's lots of resources out there that are available for people who are like, well, I don't know how to coach. I don't know what the drills are. There's lots of resources that are out there. And if you are, again, a competent skier, a passionate skier, and somebody who knows at least a little bit about racing, you can very, very quickly. You don't realize how much it will click when you're just watching the videos. And so I learned a ton in going through the level 100 certification process. What's funny is in the level 100, I said, well, now I'm going to get the level 200 and the level 300. And then when I looked into it, level 2 and 300 is all about race course setting and taking down. And I was like, nope, not going to do that. It's too hard.
So maybe you've reached the end of your certification level.
Almost. Actually, the thing I'm really excited about this year is I'm going to get certified to do more in the context of administering races. That is something that you can be right in the action. You can be calling the times. You can be a gate, standing at one of the gates. You can be a chief of course. There are lots of things that you can do in that context as well. And again, anything I think that gets you in the action and part of the event of the day is just wonderful.
So we've ended our race day. We always like to end with, what does après look like for you and your family?
So it depends where we are. When we're traveling and there's maybe a hot tub or a pool, it's definitely right into the water. So the kids love that distinction between you're out in the cold, bundled up and wearing all this gear, and then getting into their swimsuits and hopping into the water. So that's always super fun. If there's an outdoor hot tub, they love that as well. My kids love snacks. So it's all about, what are we going to eat when we get off the mountain? And so there's always going to be some delicious snack. And then my husband and I, maybe a glass of wine, some wine and cheese. And so it's a really fun time after the fact. And one of the things I love is the kids have been out there all day. They're in the elements. Maybe it's a little cold, but they were out there, keeping their body temperatures up. So they're pretty tired. And so then, at night, it's pretty easy to get them to go to bed and they sleep really well. So it leads to kind of a healthy, overall active lifestyle.
Isabelle, thank you so much for all this information. One of the things we didn't really give a whole lot of time to was Mohawk Mountain in Connecticut. Can you give us a brief overview of this mountain and what it means for families?
Yeah. So Mohawk Mountain is located in Cornwall, Connecticut. It's a wonderful little mountain with programming for kids from sort of the youngest age group. You could do a joint group lesson with with an instructor and a really small child all the way up through the race team. So the availability of programming for the children through the winter months is very, very extensive. Mohawk is fairly unique in that they were the place where snowmaking was actually originally pioneered. So they are really, really good at it and really passionate about snowmaking. So even if the snow, natural snow in a particular season has been a little lighter, you'll always usually find snow if the temperature and conditions are right. You'll almost always find snow at Mohawk. So that's really great for the kids and families who come out there. It's a lot of folks who live locally in the area who come and enjoy the mountain, and then a lot of New Yorkers who drive up. It's about a 2-hour drive from New York. So you've got some people who have second homes up there who will participate in the programs and come spend time at Mohawk. And then you've got people who come up for the day and maybe just spend the day up at Mohawk. There's a fantastic lodge with great food. One of my favorite things to eat there is egg and cheese on a roll. I'm not a big early morning breakfast person, so when I'm coaching, I usually just kind of go straight to the mountain and have those runs with the kids, and then we'll come in for a break. And my reward or my treat to myself is an egg and cheese on a roll and a cup of coffee. So it's a really great mountain. It's family run. A lot of the staff are repeat from season to season. It's a great place for kids to actually get winter jobs, whether they're working in the ski shop or they're actually teaching other kids. One of the programs that Mohawk runs is actually something called Amped. So if you've made it through all of this ski programming and you've decided, I either don't want to be on the race team anymore, or I don't want to be on the race team at all. I'm 14, 15, 16 years old, and I want to learn to be a teacher. There is an Amped program where the teenagers can learn to become instructors. And it's just a great place for them to develop that independence and some of those skills. A lot of parents hang out in the lodge and on a race day, or if the kids are actually having a lesson during the day. So it's a great place just to kind of hang out. There's Wi-Fi. Parents will sit there and work. And it's nice and warm, and you've got that great access to food. And it's just a great place to hang out for a couple of hours.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we really encourage more moms to look into their ski racing programs. And we are very grateful that you are out there teaching the next generation. So thank you so much, Isabelle.
Thanks so much for having me.
We are in full ski trip planning mode for the upcoming season, and we have a great new Ski Moms resource to share with you. We just launched the Ski Mom Family Rentals website at skimomfamilyrentals.com. Our website connects moms across the U.S. and Canada with family-friendly ski homes, so you know you're booking from someone who gets it. Search by state to find the perfect vacation rental for your next family ski trip. We like to think of it as ski vacation rentals by moms for moms. Skip the stress of endless scrolling. Every property is handpicked with your skiing family in mind. Go to www.skimomfamilyrentals.com to explore our listings. Now is the time to book those ski trips for the upcoming season. And if you have a ski home to list with us, it's just $50 a year. You can showcase your ski property to thousands of like-minded moms. So visit skimomfamilyrentals.com to find the perfect place for your next family ski trip.
Hey, Ski Moms, we hope you enjoyed today's episode and got some great tips for your next family ski adventure. If you had as much fun listening as we did making this episode, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on our latest episodes. And don't forget to rate and review us. Your feedback helps us bring you more of the content you love and helps other ski moms find our podcast. Plus, we love hearing from you. So whether you're on the slopes or just dreaming of your next snowy getaway, stay connected with us. Follow us on social media, share your favorite episodes with your friends, and let's keep this awesome community growing. Ready to level up your family ski and snowboard gear this season? Let Ski House make it easy and fun with their Junior Equipment Trade-In program. Forget traditional rentals. Your kids get to shred on brand new gear at huge discounts. Here's how it works. First, you'll head to one of the 3 ski house locations to pick out your new skis, boots, snowboards, and bindings for your kids. Keep skiing and riding all season long. Then bring your gear back by Thanksgiving the next year and get a 50% credit towards next season's gear. It's the smart way to keep your kids in high-performance gear without breaking the bank. You'll get to pick from top brands like Atomic, Nordica, Rossignol, Salomon, and K2. A few tips. Bring your child's skis or snowboard and have a clean pair of skis and socks. Bring your child's skis and snowboards and have a clean pair of ski socks in hand. The ski house experts will ensure everything fits like a glove. When your kids have top quality equipment that's perfectly sized, they'll be carving turns and hitting jumps with confidence all season. Pick from 3 locations, Woburn and Framingham in Massachusetts, and shop tax-free in Salem, New Hampshire. Check them out at skihouse.com. That's skihaus.com to find your nearest store and schedule your fitting.